There is a moment every parent knows. Your child is melting down in the middle of the grocery store, or refusing to listen, or throwing something across the room, and every instinct you have is screaming at you to do something. To punish. To threaten. To take something away. To raise your voice. And maybe it works, in that moment. The behavior stops. But then it comes back. And you find yourself doing the same thing again tomorrow, and the day after that, wondering why nothing ever seems to actually change. What if the problem isn't your child? What if the problem is the strategy itself? Japan has one of the most striking relationships with childhood behavior of any culture on earth. Japanese children clean their own classrooms. They serve each other lunch. They ride the subway alone at young ages. They wait patiently, resolve conflicts quietly, and show a level of self-discipline that visitors from other countries often find almost impossible to believe. And yet Japanese parenting, at its core, is not built on strict punishment, rigid rules, or fear. In fact, it's nearly the opposite. Today we're going to look at 3 philosophical pillars that sit at the heart of Japanese childrearing, concepts that developmental psychology is increasingly validating, and we're going to talk about what they actually look like in practice, not as abstract ideas, but as a real shift in how you show up with your kids every single day. The first concept is called Shitsuke. It's written in Japanese characters that literally translate to attaching beauty to the body. Think about that phrase for a moment. Not forcing good behavior. Not demanding it. Not threatening consequences until a child complies. Attaching beauty to the body. The idea is that good behavior, over time, becomes part of who a child is, not something they perform out of fear, but something they embody because it has become inseparable from their identity. In Western parenting culture, we have largely built our approach around a reactive model. We wait for bad behavior to happen, and then we respond to it. The child hits, we take away screen time. The child refuses to eat, we send them to their room. The child lies, we ground them. The logic seems sensible on the surface. There are actions, and there are consequences. That's how the world works, after all. But here's what the research on child development keeps showing us. Punishment changes the calculation a child is running in their head, but it doesn't build the underlying skill. When a child acts out, it is almost always because they are missing something. They might be missing the ability to regulate a surge of emotion. They might not yet know how to communicate frustration in words. They might lack the patience to tolerate waiting, or the experience to understand that another person has feelings too. Punishment addresses none of that. It says, in effect, this behavior is unacceptable, stop it. But it doesn't teach the child what to do instead. The shift Shitsuke asks us to make is a move from reaction to prevention, and from consequences to skill building. When your child acts out, the Shitsuke-informed question is not what punishment fits this behavior. It's what skill is my child missing right now? And then you build toward that skill, through modeling, through practice, through consistency, day after day, until it becomes part of who they are. The second concept is Mimamoru, and it's one of the most quietly counterintuitive ideas in this entire framework. It translates roughly as watching over while protecting, and at its core, it is the practice of resisting your instinct to intervene. If you have a child who is struggling with something, your body tells you to help. That's not a flaw. That's love. But there is a difference between a child who needs rescuing and a child who is in the middle of productive struggle, and Mimamoru is the art of learning to tell those two things apart. When a child falls down and skins their knee and cries, and a parent rushes over immediately, scoops them up, and declares it a catastrophe, the child gets a message: this was bad, this was something to panic about, I needed to be saved. But when a parent is close enough to watch, close enough to offer comfort if it's truly needed, but steps back and gives the child a moment to process the experience themselves, something different happens. The child gets a message: I can handle this. I fell down, it hurt, and I got back up. Neuroscientists sometimes call this the window of productive discomfort. It is the space in which real competence is built. Children who are never allowed to experience difficulty, whose problems are always solved for them, who are rescued the instant something feels hard, don't develop genuine confidence. They develop performance confidence, which looks fine when things are going well and collapses the moment real challenge shows up. Mimamoru is not neglect. It is not indifference. Japanese parents practicing this concept are deeply attentive. They are watching. They are present. They are available. But they are holding back the reflex to fix, because they understand that the struggle itself is the lesson. The meltdown your 4-year-old is having over not getting the red cup? That meltdown is a practice session in emotional regulation. Every time a child moves through a difficult emotion and comes out the other side intact, they have strengthened something real. This is hard for parents, maybe harder than almost anything else in this framework, because it requires sitting with your own discomfort while your child experiences theirs. But the research is clear: children who are given space to struggle, in safe contexts, with a trusted adult nearby, develop significantly stronger resilience than children who are shielded from every form of difficulty. The third concept is perhaps the most unexpected, because it sounds, on the surface, like indulgence. It's called Amae, and it refers to the deep, settled feeling of being able to depend completely on another person's love. Of knowing, in your body, that you are unconditionally cared for. Western parenting culture has sometimes confused firmness with coldness, as if warmth and structure are opposites, as if love needs to be withheld sometimes to be meaningful. But the neuroscience of early attachment tells a very different story. In Japan, early childhood is characterized by extraordinary physical closeness. Co-sleeping is common and normalized. Babies are carried constantly. Physical affection is abundant. And rather than producing clingy, insecure children who can't function independently, this secure attachment appears to do something quite specific to the developing nervous system. It tells the child's body, you are safe. You are loved. Nothing about your place in the world is uncertain. A child whose nervous system carries that message doesn't need to act out to get attention. They don't need to create drama to feel seen. They don't need to push boundaries to test whether you'll still be there. The security is already present. It's already in their body. And from that place of security, self-regulation becomes natural rather than forced. They can tolerate disappointment because disappointment doesn't threaten the relationship. They can handle conflict because conflict doesn't mean abandonment. What's remarkable is how this maps onto what attachment theorists like John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth documented decades ago. Children with secure attachment, children who know they can return to a safe base, explore more boldly, recover from setbacks more quickly, and develop more sophisticated social and emotional skills than children whose attachment is anxious or uncertain. The warmth isn't weakness. The warmth is the foundation everything else is built on. So we have 3 pillars. Shitsuke, building good behavior as an identity rather than a performance. Mimamoru, trusting your child to move through struggle rather than rescuing them from it. And Amae, the unconditional love that makes all of it possible. But there's one more piece of this that ties everything together, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. It's repetition. If you walk into a Japanese elementary school around lunchtime, you will see something that stops most Western visitors in their tracks. The children are serving each other lunch. They are putting on little white coats and hats. They are carrying trays and ladling soup. They are doing this carefully and proudly, and when they're done, they will clean the classroom themselves. No janitor comes in. They sweep, they mop, they wipe down the desks. And they have been doing this since they were 6 years old. The Japanese educational philosophy treats these rituals not as chores or punishments but as character formation. When a child sets the table every night, they are not just learning where the fork goes. They are becoming someone who contributes. They are practicing the awareness of others, the coordination of a shared space, the satisfaction of work done well. Over hundreds of repetitions, that becomes something much more than a habit. It becomes identity. And identity is the most powerful driver of behavior there is. This is the core insight behind Shitsuke. Character is not something you talk a child into. It is not something that comes from a lecture about responsibility. It is something that grows from repeated, small, embodied actions, so embedded into daily life that eventually the child cannot imagine themselves as someone who doesn't do these things. Here's what's interesting about the way this works developmentally. Research on motivation and habit formation consistently shows that external rewards, sticker charts, allowances tied to tasks, praise every time a child does something right, actually undermine intrinsic motivation over time. When a child does something because they want a sticker, the task becomes about the sticker. Remove the sticker and the motivation collapses. But when a child does something repeatedly, without reward or pressure, with just the quiet expectation that this is what we do in this family, something different takes root. The action becomes part of their story about who they are. And people act in accordance with their self-concept far more reliably than they act in response to external incentives. So what does all of this look like in practice? If you're a parent sitting here thinking, this sounds beautiful but my mornings are chaos and my 5-year-old just threw a shoe at the wall, it starts small. It starts with one thing. Think about a single daily ritual you could introduce this week. Something that belongs to your child. Something that requires a small but real contribution. Having them pack their own school bag the night before. Having them set the table before dinner. Having them water one plant, make their bed, put their dish in the sink, fold their own laundry. One thing, done consistently, without a reward attached, and without pressure that makes it feel like a test. Just a quiet, steady expectation. This is something we do. This is part of our day. Do it with them at first. Show them how. Let it be imperfect. Let them do it their own way. And then step back and watch what happens over weeks and months as the action becomes routine, and routine becomes identity, and identity begins to express itself in ways that go far beyond the single task you started with. This is the Japanese approach to raising a calm, capable, self-disciplined child. Not rules enforced by fear. Not punishment that stops behavior without building skill. But a patient, steady commitment to building the whole person, through security, through space to struggle, through repeated small actions that accumulate into character. It doesn't require a different child. It just requires a different starting point.